Hey everybody, it's Aaron here with Robert, and welcome to Get Your Geek On's horror movie retro review. I have no idea what we named this at this
I don't
point,
know.
and
It
I don't
doesn't matter.
remember.
This is the last
That's the
one,
last
so
one.
why would it matter? We don't need to try and be consistent or,
No, consistency is never the key. Never have
not
consistency.
with us.
No, that would just make us boring. So this
uh
week,
yeah,
or yeah, this week it would be Monday, right? Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Halloween.
It
This is
is.
this is Halloween, but we're
This
not
is
doing that
Halloween,
movie.
Halloween, Halloween. Because that's scary either. It's like, nah, that one's not. I don't know. My kid
No, then
watches it too much too.
yeah, the Nightmare Before Christmas is a very good movie.
It is.
But it didn't fit in with
It
necessarily the theme of what we were trying to do here. Maybe someday we'll
exactly.
do some kind of retro review of that one. Who
We
knows? Who
should.
knows? Who knows?
Tim Burton reviews.
No, you will
Oh.
not get me on that.
Oh.
I Tim Burton is not my guy. So,
I mean, not mine either. There's so many flops he has for me, and I'm like, oh yeah.
but let's get into this. Let's talk about this movie, which is The Witch, which came out in 2015.
So just
Um,
7 years ago.
Meaning that this is the most recent movie we have done. But ironically, it's set in the time period that is the earliest that we've explored of these
Oh
six
yeah.
movies. So we'll just start with it. It is directed by Robert Eggers, who's not someone I'm really familiar with. I haven't seen most of his stuff.
Mm-mm.
But starring Anya Taylor-Joy, who
Mm-hmm.
this actually was her first movie role, but then she went on to do other things like Split. She was in
Oh, I know she was in Split.
New Mutants. She was also, I think she was in, I can't remember the movie where she's playing like an artificial intelligence of some kind, like Morgan or something like that. Can't remember
Mordegon.
exactly if that's what it's called. But then she was in The Queen's Gambit, very talented actress. And this was her kind of breakout role. And it also has a couple of the father and the mother are played by kind of well-known character actors, Ralph Ineson and Katie
Mm-hmm.
Dickey. People will recognize them. I think they were both actually in Game of Thrones, although I don't think
I
they
think
shared
so.
any roles or shared any screens or anything like that. But they've been around for a while.
Right.
And really, it's a very small cast. I mean, outside of those three, then we get like child actors,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then mostly non-speaking parts from anyone else outside of the family. It's an extremely limited cast, and so we're
Mm-hmm.
going to talk about this movie. We are going to spoil it. So if you
Yes.
don't want this movie spoiled for you, make sure and don't read the title,
No,
because
not at all.
the title is what the movie is. Like it's just what it is.
It's the
Um,
witch.
but yeah, it's let's talk about this because this movie, I am not a horror guy, but
Right.
this movie kind of, in 2015, I would say, I was, really starting to get into movies a lot, where I
Right.
was really, paying attention to what was coming out, paying attention to kind of big movies and things like that. And this one kind of like came into my consciousness. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
see it, but it was like, this movie was like people were talking about it. This was a fairly big movie that came out around then. At least in, people were talking about Anya Taylor-Joy's performance.
Right.
People were talking about, that this kind of was, something that kind of flipped the genre a little bit, that, that this is the type of movie that hadn't been seen in horror in a while, was really
Mm-hmm.
kind of reinventing some things. And so I actually had kind of been interested in seeing it for a while, but then this was kind of the perfect opportunity to see it, and
Right.
so that's how I came to it. This is my first time seeing it, and I think it's your first time as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what, like, do you remember people talking about this movie? Did it just slip past you?
It slipped past me because I don't remember this one, honestly. I want to say I remember like hearing about it at some point, but not enough to be like, oh yeah, I remember this, and I wanted to go
Hmm.
see it in theaters. It was like, okay, like another film. Again, The Witch. It was not. Now seeing it, I'm kind of glad I didn't watch it in theaters. It's not my cup of horror tea. Like I said,
Hmm.
I like horror. I'm liking certain things. That This one was just not it. Now,
Sure.
and this one, I think, again, another small budget, and again, using small cast saves you that money. It was only a $4 million budget. Box office brought in 40.4 million. So I mean, it made its money.
Oh yeah.
Just not as big as some of the other ones we've seen with a lower budget, even like, like Saw and a couple of the others. So I don't know if that was a good deal or not. I think the setting was cool. I think the clothing and the way they looked gave you that old school feel.
Mhm.
The guy, I forgot, like you said his name, the character actor guy, he had that scruffy voice to him when he would talk. And I'm like, okay, this
Yeah.
kind of fit that time frame and what this character's for. But yeah, I don't it was just went right over my head.
Yeah, so well, let's get into the movie. So it's set in the early 1600s. It's
Right.
kind of, it's set in New England. We have this family that, is basically we're introduced to them basically being excommunicated, if you
Mm-hmm.
will, from their community they've come from England. They've established, this new community in the new world, and their views are too extreme even for that community.
Right.
Their religious views are just too extreme, and they basically get kicked out, and so they have to kind of go off on their own and establish their
Mm-hmm.
own farm, if you will, and so they establish it next to these woods where we get like creepy, sinister chanting and music and things like that. That it doesn't seem
Right.
like the characters hear, but we hear it.
Right.
And so yeah, they move in, and then we get a time jump where now they've like built a home and things like that. They don't tell us how long it's been. Kind of for
No.
me, it felt like it's been about a year, maybe something like
Probably,
that,
yeah.
because I don't think the woman was pregnant when they were getting kicked out.
Right.
It didn't seem that she was, but now they have a newborn. So it seems like it's been about a year maybe that they've been living. And the story kind of kicks off when the oldest daughter, who's played by Anya Taylor-Joy, is kind of playing peekaboo with this new baby, and she, covers her eyes a few
Mm-hmm.
times, peekaboo, peekaboo, and then one time when she goes like this, baby's gone and missing.
Right.
And we see some scenes where looks like baby gets sacrificed, baby gets
Mm-hmm.
murdered, and it's some kind of ritual in the woods with like this witch. We don't see like a lot of details, but it definitely is very clear that this baby has been killed.
Right.
And then, of course, that is tearing the family apart. The mother, of course, is upset with the daughter for having lost her baby.
Right.
It's and we just kind of go through these sequences where weird things keep happening, and especially they seem to happen around the daughter. And so as that happens, tensions escalate, and we get to the point where she basically gets accused of being a witch
Mm-hmm.
by her family, and things again escalate. The oldest son ends up getting lost in the woods. He
Mm-hmm.
encounters the witch, and then ends up back on the farm kind of possessed and unable to talk about it. He ends
Right.
up like he dies. The youngest kids are like there's twins. They get like they're having weird things happening to them.
Right.
Again, we're blaming the oldest daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and she's trying to say it's not me, it's actually the little kids, the twins. They're with this goat, and there's weird crap going on with the goat, and it's not
Right.
me. And again, it's just tearing the family completely apart. And eventually, basically everyone either dies or disappears. Dad gets attacked by the goat, he dies. Mom
Mm-hmm.
kind of has a weird dream encounter with the witch, and then
Right.
attacks the daughter, who then fights her off and kills her. The
Mm-hmm.
twins disappear, we don't see exactly what happens to them.
You mean you assume at
And
that point they're just sacrificed somewhere?
yeah, we don't know. And yeah, oldest daughter, who has not been a witch,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the movie has
Becomes
nothing
one.
else and says, "Well, I guess I'll become a witch."
Right. At this
Makes
point,
a de-
everybody
makes a
said I
deal
was.
makes a deal with the devil, goes off into the
Same
woods,
as Philip.
and yeah. So
It
a very kind of slow and
it
atmospheric,
yeah.
very claustrophobic movie where you're not really sure if she is a witch the whole time or not. But clearly there are witches that are
Right.
affecting this family. There's things going on. Um, I guess you already said this wasn't really your cup of tea in
Mm-mm.
terms of horror, and ultimately it wasn't really mine either. I
Yeah.
I think the movie's very well made. I think it's very well acted, but I
Hmm.
did not enjoy my time watching this movie.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, I think this is a perfect movie for someone that's really into this type. I think um, I don't know what I expected it to be, but it wasn't this. And I did kind of just found myself not really caring by the end of the
Mm,
movie. It was like, oh,
yeah.
like I don't really care who's a witch or who's not a witch. This whole family, they're all a bunch of jerks to each
They
other.
really
They're
are.
all gonna die, and I don't really care.
It's like I don't I couldn't feel sorry for any of the characters, like maybe I guess the older daughter because
A,
everyone was just picking on her
a
and
little
like I
bit, but she
kind
also
of but
like tortures her little sister
yeah, the
in like a
twins.
moment where she's like clearly she's playing around, but she
Yeah,
also takes it too far. It's like,
exactly.
you have like this 6-year-old girl that she's kind of like torturing, and it's like, yeah, you took that too far. Like
Right.
you crossed the line.
And that's where I started losing sympathy for her. It's like, okay, like I don't have any sympathy at all for you. All of them were again were just mean. They were
Yeah.
mean people at the end of the day. And I don't know. Like I said earlier, it's not my cup of tea. I don't mind a slow burn, but if it's too slow, I start checking out.
Mm.
And this almost gave me that Exorcist feel of like, okay, we're building, 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 building. 30 seconds of action, building, building, building. And it's like, okay, like I
Yeah.
expected a little bit more. Like I knew she was gonna kill the mom. I knew the mom was gonna like. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, everyone else is dead. It's now time for the mom to die. Like the mom's got to die.
Sure.
And it was like, okay, that happened. And then it was like you said, there was nothing left for her. She had nothing else. So now it's like, okay, I'm just gonna screw it. Y'all kept calling me one. I'm just gonna join them. Like, here comes the devil, of course, to offer the contract. And it's like,
Hmm.
I'll be here to help you. And then goes from there.
Yeah, I really
And
appreciated the detail of like, okay, you've got to sign your name in his book, kind of thing. And she's
yeah.
like, I don't know how to write my name because she's like, in the 1600s, they're not
Mm-hmm.
teaching girls how to write. And he's like, don't worry, I'll help you out.
I
Like
got you.
I
I
got
got
you
you,
on that
baby.
one.
He's like, I got you, baby. Let me get that going for you. Let me
Hmm.
dip that
We'll,
quill.
we'll get your name in the book. Don't
Don't
you worry
worry.
about that.
Yeah. Devil has got a
Uh,
plan for everything. I mean, and that's where it's like I liked that we never saw his face really. It
mhm.
was always like covered and you just hear the glove and the glove kind of even was hard to see, so it kind of made it almost look like a hoof a little bit, like if you kind of really looked at it. And I
Yeah,
was like, okay, I like how they're portraying this humanoid devil essentially or demon or whatever I mean, I'm
right.
just gonna say devil because I think she
Yeah,
calls him Philip, right? Or
I
something.
think he's the devil, and we see, like, okay, the goat, which she kind of suspected
Well,
was, like we see the twins, talking about having talked to this goat, and then
right.
of course the goat, attacks and kills the dad, um, and then she goes and talks to it, and it responds, and then I love the moment where like it talks about the book, and then you
Mm-hmm.
see the book and you see like a hoof and then a boot,
Yeah.
so
Like
clearly
he's
it
turning.
it transformed,
Yeah.
like kind of thing. And so I thought that worked.
The one thing I did have a bad about the father's death, the horns or the antlers that this goat has
Huh.
were like way back here. The pointy parts way back here on its head. How did it bend its head like in a way to like gore him? I'm like, how did you do that? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, you would have
blunt
to like
force trauma, who knows?
I don't know.
I
I
don't
would have
know.
been okay if he would just rammed it like, oh, like you see him like break ribs kind of look like you hear the crack, like,
Right.
okay. Which he did the second round. The second
Yeah,
ram, it
we
was like
needed we needed
knocks you
some
out.
blood, so don't worry about it.
We don't talk
uh
about how that happened. It just
yeah.
happened. It's not another door scene. It's just a thing.
Yeah, and I, again, like the atmospheric part, and there were some like quick cuts when weird things were going on. It would like
Right.
cut to a weird, like the witch, or like there were definitely a couple parts where a character's kind of going out in darkness, and all they have is their little lantern, and we're seeing their face. We're not seeing what they see, and we
Right.
see kind of their reactions and things like that. And so again, I thought the movie is very well shot, very well acted. Like you can
Right.
tell, Anya Taylor-Joy, who went on to a lot of acclaim and critical success and other things. Like you can see why. Like
Right.
she's very
She sold
good.
it.
She's very good in this role. I will say I was completely prejudiced against the mom immediately because it's like as soon as I saw her, I didn't place her right away. I was like,
Mhm.
but I immediately was like, she's played a character that I really don't like, and I couldn't get it out of my mind. And eventually, I figured out, oh, it's that Game of Thrones. Like she's
Yeah.
the chick from the Eerie, Lysa Arryn, who like lives with her like her little son who's like 12 years old who's still like breastfeeding and like is and I'm
Oh,
like
that's who
and
she
as soon as I remembered I
is.
was like, oh, that's who it is, and I can't stand her. So it was like I was totally
You already
prejudiced
done.
against
Yeah.
her from the very beginning of the movie because it was like I don't like this woman, like whatever
Right.
role she had, I don't like her. So that was kind of like that's on me. That's not on the actress. That's not on the movie.
Right.
But I did have that. But I will say I thought the little boy actor
Uh-huh.
who let me look up his name. It's Harvey Scrimshaw playing Caleb. I thought he was great. Like I thought he did a really good job in his role, and that's
Yeah.
again the movie itself didn't blow me away. I think it's a well done movie, but it's not my
It
type of movie. And
right.
so it kind of was just kind of like, I didn't really care, but I did really like him in the movie and the way he kind of like there was a moment where he just like stone face lied to his mom
Right.
after just having this conversation about how like if he died today would he end up in hell because of sinning and stuff like that. And so I was just like, dang, this kid just like he just he just went for it.
Right.
And his dad, who is right there, who knows 100% this is a lie, just kind of lets it go. And I'm like, ooh, like this family is very dysfunctional, and this
Oh
is
yeah.
not going to end well for any of them.
They like I said, they kind of deserved it. A lot of them kind of deserved
I mean,
it.
that's harsh. I don't know that they deserve to die, but they were not making good choices. Let's
Look,
put it that
we know I follow in line with Doctor Doom.
way. Okay, yeah.
So, the
Uh-huh.
best for Latveria.
No, you sound like a slasher where you're like, if you sin, you must die. You may,
I mean, I guess that makes me more Punisher. Oh, you're a sinner? He's got to take you out.
I
He's
guess
very
so.
black and white.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was just, I don't know. Like, I don't, I enjoyed it to an extent, but there were parts
Mhm.
that, like I said, that slow burn, if it drags too much, I do check out. And I kind of did. But again, I love the acting. I think she, like you said, she did a great job. The boy did a great job. I just, the goat did a great job. It hid that it was the devil pretty well. The great goat. Um, I will say the dog scene kind of got me because I hate when seeing a dog kind of die.
Mm.
So that one kind of got me because I'm
Yeah,
like,
that one
oh,
it was so quick that it was like kind of hard to make out I was like, okay, like I think he found the dog dead. Like I think that's what it was.
yeah,
Um, but the horse was also missing at that point. So I was like,
yeah,
maybe
that's
that was
true.
the horse. And then it just like immediately went to, again, other things. And so it was kind of like that didn't linger with me.
Hmm.
Um, and so that one wasn't as effective for me, but I thought the scene where the little boy encountered the witch was a
Oh, that
really
was a
good
cool
that was a
scene.
really good scene. And I like, the like where he's seeing kind of a young, attractive woman, and then, at the moment, like you see the hand come around and
Oh
it's like
yeah,
gnarled and creepy and nasty, and you're like, oh, like yep, he's in trouble.
it's like,
Um,
and you're dead.
and I wasn't sure if he was going to show back up. And so when he did, that was like that sequence where he was back in the
That
family and then
yeah,
he was possessed and they were trying to like pray. And, like then the little twins, like were having their like reaction to it and they weren't, praying. And you kind of had the tension just ratcheted up as it was like, are you a witch? Is there witchcraft going on in this house?
right.
Like, all that stuff. That sequence in particular, leading up to the little boy's death, and then I think the dream sequence. I think those are my two favorite
The dream where
sequences.
she sees the little boy holding the baby.
Yeah.
Oh, that one hit too. And I was like,
Hmm.
but then seeing like how crazy she looked when the crow was pecking at her, I was like,
Yeah, where it
Oh,
kind of cut to this witch who's drinking, blood, and then she kind
yeah.
of cackles, and then it cuts to, this woman cackling with like a crow pecking at her breast, which she's dreaming that it's breastfeeding. Like it's just it all worked really well.
That
So
part's where it picked up again. And
yeah,
like I said, that 30 seconds of payoff of like, here's what's going on.
yeah. I,
And
that's what I will say is that I think that, you know, I I'm not sure what could have been done differently. I think maybe we were missing some kind of sequence where the youngest daughter or the oldest daughter um, had something weird with her before the baby
right,
disappeared. Like I think that's what we were missing is that there needed to be that there was something weird that had happened to her even before the baby disappeared,
right.
so that there could have been like just a little bit more build up to it. I think that's kind of
It
where I think was missing something.
right.
Um, and ultimately, what I found interesting is that the only character who never encountered any weirdness or any witchcraft was the father. Because
Hmm.
really the only thing that I guess you could say is like when he tried to shoot the rabbit, but he didn't attribute that to any like weirdness or anything like
Right.
that. And so like he does not actually encounter any of these weird things until the goat, like really attacks him.
And that's where
Um,
he kind of figured it out, I think, at that point too.
yeah, and I think he kind of gives up too. Like you see him, he grabs the axe and then he kind of is like, I'm not gonna fight this. Like it's
Right.
just,
I
whatever
mean,
this curse is, I'm just gonna give up.
yeah, and at that point, four of the kids are dead because the twins are missing, so you think they're dead. The little boy just died. His baby's already dead, so all four kids are missing. And now you just know it's either the mom or the oldest daughter that's the witch. I mean, that's got to be that would be my thought pattern. It's like if it's either my oldest or my wife, one of them's the witch now. And at
Which
that point, yeah, you just
which
give
neither
up.
of them technically were. Like
Right? They
at the
they weren't.
very end, she goes and becomes a witch, but she was not a witch to begin with.
Right.
Which again, like that's the twist is that, you have,
Hmm.
and that's where, again, it's kind of playing on that the Salem witch trials and things like that, where like
Yeah.
people were being accused of being witches when, I mean, the overwhelming likelihood is that they were not, practicing witchcraft of any kind, and even if they,
Right.
were, it was, again, the actual whether or not you believe witchcraft can actually do these things or whatnot, whatever. Um, but it kind of was. I appreciated that it was like this very we're going to accuse you of being a witch and have this whole thing, which, and
Yep.
of course, she was innocent. She wasn't a witch, but all of these actions that they took drove her to that.
Hmm.
Where by the end, she does embrace that darkness. She does embrace.
Hmm.
She's now witnessed all of this. She's killed her mother. In self-defense, but still.
And she
And
watched her dad die.
she watched her dad die. She's had three children, well, and her brother, and had
Oh
three
yeah.
other children disappear. And she's just like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm like, whatever this is, I'm just gonna embrace the darkness. I'll, take off all my clothes, go into the woods, and become a witch. Here we go. Float up into
Yes.
the air.
All witches have to be naked, by the way. So just remember that.
Apparently, that's the deal you make.
So on that note, we kind of talked a while about it. What's your rating? And I don't think we should compare it to modern movies because I mean it's so close. I don't think there's no need to compare it. I think it could still
Yeah,
come
I
out the way
mean,
it did.
in terms of the movie making, I think the one thing that stood out is the aspect ratio was not the
Yeah.
standard widescreen that we've come to see in the last, 20, 30 years.
Hmm.
It's also not like the TV aspect ratio. Like it wasn't, it was kind of in between those. It kind of harkened back to almost old Hollywood and that type of thing where it's a little bit taller of a
Hmm.
ratio, and not quite as wide, which I thought worked for
And
this movie as we were
yeah,
seeing like, kind of the trees or things like that where you
right.
wanted to kind of get that into the, and so in terms of movie making it was an interesting choice because it
It
was not
was.
made the way that a lot of modern movies are made, even though it was made in the modern era. And so I
Hmm.
thought that worked, but yeah, um, from a score perspective, this is one of those tough ones because it's like this movie's not for me, but it
Right.
is very well made. It's very well acted, and so I think that I'm probably going to give this score about a 6.5 out of 10. And honestly, if this is your type of movie, it's probably going to rate much higher. I
Exactly.
think that what's dragging it down is that I didn't really enjoy the movie. But in terms of its quality, I think there's a couple things. Again, from screenwriting, I think it could have been a little bit longer. The movie was fairly
Right.
short. I think it was, only about an hour and a half. And I think we could have had a few other things kind of happening that would have kind of built more to the disappearance, because that disappearance of the baby happens really quickly. And I
Right.
think if we had had some weird things or weirdness happening maybe before
It
then,
it would have
um,
helped, I
it
think.
would have worked well. I will say I think it subverted expectations at a couple points, because like we see the father chopping wood like 3 or 4 times in the movie, and I kind of expected him to have some kind of mishap with the axe and like maybe chop his leg or something, like like
Right.
I kind of was, and it never did that. And so I thought it kind of subverted expectations in that way, where like I kind of was expecting something to happen with him specifically, and it kind of never did, which I thought that was interesting.
Right.
But I will say again, I think that the movie, missed a couple things. Like we get an early sequence with the daughter kind of talking about how she's a sinner, and she's done all these, like she's praying and saying all she, but we haven't actually seen her do anything that she's not supposed to, right? We only hear her saying it, that she goes off and plays, or like doesn't follow her parents, she's disobedient. But we actually don't see that. Like from what we see, she seems to be a pretty well behaved, child who listens to her parents. Like clearly there's some animosity between her and the mother, but we don't know why
Right.
necessarily, until obviously when the baby disappears, then it makes a lot of sense, like we
Hmm.
understand. But I think that's kind of what was missing in the movie. And so I think that for me, again, as you said, there weren't a lot of characters to kind of latch onto and say like I really feel bad. Like you can't really feel bad for the dad, because he's done some things that he's lying to his wife, or he's like those types of things where it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, I'm not, like, I think Caleb, the little boy, is probably the one that I feel for, because he just seems to be like he's really trying to step up, become a man, do
Right.
these things, take care of his family, protect his sister, protect his, like all this stuff. Like
Hmm.
I think he's the one that I feel bad for. Um, and outside of that, the little twins are creepy. The oldest daughter, kind of takes things a little bit too far at times. The
Hmm.
parents, like the mom is in her
It,
grief, understandable, but she's
right.
also a total jerk to her daughter.
Yes.
And then you have the dad who, again, is kind of making some choices
It's
that aren't bad. So it's just kind of like there weren't a lot of characters to really,
mhm.
empathize with.
Right. And
So
I
that's
think
kind
I
of my
agree with
final
you.
thoughts.
I think I agree with you. I think my rating's more average again because it's not my cup of tea. It's like a 5 out of 10. It's an average movie. Go see it if you want to have fun, just watching a story develop, I guess. But I agree with you. There were, I think you said it earlier, but the best. Some of the shots went too quick. You go from, oh, look at the spooky thing. Oh, never mind, we're looking over here. Oh, here's a spooky thing. Nope, it's over here. Oh, look at them. Look at the spooky thing and then react to it. Yeah, I want a little bit more of the other stuff. And again, with this bigger budget than some of the other smaller films that we had, I felt they could do it maybe. Again, inflation and everything else you could say kicked in, and that could be the cause of it. I do agree though that I really wish we had more character development if we are gonna have that long, slow burn.
Hmm.
Like you said, the mom was already iffy with the daughter, and right before she kills the daughter, she says, "Oh, I watched how you sexually transfixed the little boy," which I was like,
Yeah.
you realize he's a young boy becoming a man, so he doesn't know how to act on these. Like no one's teaching him anything, so it's like no one's sitting there and having quote unquote
Yeah.
the talk with him, and it's
Right.
like you no, like he doesn't have anything. He doesn't know yet. He doesn't know what to do,
Right.
and I think I wish they would have like talked a little bit more about that, or maybe like showed him trying to spy on the sister, and it's like, hey, what's going on? Maybe dad trying to tell him some stuff and like talk to him, or it's more like we got to pray for these things because of sins and this desire and all that stuff. Because then that would have sold me on the witch a little bit more. Because when we see the young, beautiful, very
Hmm.
voluptuous witch, which is what transfixed him, that makes more sense now. Like leading up to something like that.
Yeah, they did
Um,
it, like there were a couple of sequences, like one where he sees her sleeping
mhm,
and he's clearly, like he, sees like the tiniest bit of cleavage and he kind of lingers looking at that.
exactly.
Or when they're by the stream, it kind
Hmm.
of has that same thing. So I think they planted the seeds, but I
I
kind of
wish they would
agree
have
they
talked
could have
about it.
made that a little bit more explicit. And even with the that encounter between the mom and the daughter, when she's kind of being attacked and the daughter just keeps saying like, I love you, I love you, I love you.
Hmm.
And it's like, you didn't really establish that. Like that's what we needed at the beginning of the movie, is
Right,
like this family actually being a happy family, loving each
right.
other, caring about one another, and then devolving into this family that is suspicious of one another. That is
And
like, that's kind of, I think, what was missing, because
right,
when they tried to like have her being like, I love you, I love you, I love you, it was
it
kind
didn't
of like,
sell.
I was just kind of like, well, but why? Like your mom's the
Yeah.
worst. Why do you love her?
No, and I agree. I was kind of there with you on that one. And again, it would have, like we said, we don't know how long it's been. And I think it would have been cool to show maybe like green, very bright and crops, like everything's going well. And then maybe as like the years progress or the seasons, maybe do like 2 or 3 years, maybe the crops are not as green. The next
Mhm.
shot, it's like, oh, now they're a little bit more brown, more brown. Now they're not growing. So
Yeah.
it could show like 3 years have passed. And it goes like from, like you said, this loving family. We get maybe a couple shots of a loving Carrie family, but it starts to go to this, no, they're, we're having issues. And
Yeah.
I think that would have been good symbolism. And again, if you're dragging it out, add stuff like that. And I feel that would have kept me more interested in it more.
Yep.
And then you give me those little lingers of, yeah, they were a good family. They do at one point they did love each other. Now it's becoming the hatred. Now it's
Yeah.
becoming,
Honestly, I mean, if you think about it, the movie is kind of missing a first act, because
yeah, because you jump
the
into it.
disappearance of the baby is almost like the second act
Yeah, it's
right
true.
there. And we only have about 5 or 10 minutes before that, where it's just kind of establishing that they get kicked out of their community, and
Hmm.
now they're on this farm by themselves. And so I think that's what's, it's almost like it's missing
Maybe
about
that's what
15
it
or 20
is.
minutes of just really establishing this family, who they are, their relationships with each other.
Hmm.
Again, that was, I think, what was missing before the inciting event. We needed to see this family as an entire unit, and how they,
Hmm.
what their relationships were, how they worked with one another, how this oldest daughter is, you know, maybe there is kind of this underlying tension, but also, she's conflicted about that and she's trying
Hmm.
to do better, and like whatever, all those things. Like I think that's what was missing ultimately from this movie, which would have made me, I think, enjoy it.
I think so. I think you're right. I think that hits it though, because I think you're right. In 5 minutes, you have the issues already presented. So I think you're right. So I don't know. But on that note, let us know what you think though. Cause like this is our views. Again, I know there's plenty of people out there who love these kind of films. And
Yep.
I want to know what you think about it. Was it like your cup of tea? Was it the genre? Is it hitting what you want in it? So let us know down below what you think of all those. And then, of course, I hope you watched all of our reviews. I hope you enjoyed all of this. This was really fun to do because Robert doesn't get to watch these kind of, or he doesn't watch them normally.
No.
I hadn't seen some of these, so it was nice to watch
Well,
some of this stuff
and
too.
especially we talked about like all this weird stuff happening at night and whatever. And
Yeah.
so I have young children, and I have a wife who does not like supernatural movies at all times. So I
Yes.
like literally had to watch all these movies at 10 o'clock at night. So that was like adding to the
And
atmosphere.
then the rain
Um,
starts coming down.
yeah, I mean, I just, so yeah, I appreciated all that. I think the only movie that my wife was okay within this whole sequence is like was Saw, because
Right.
like Exorcist is, creepy supernatural.
Right.
Halloween, you got that creepy supernatural. Saw, she was like, all right, I could deal with that.
Just some
Um,
murderer.
and then, yeah, we get, Insidious and Sinister and now The
Supernatural.
Witch, and it's
Supernatural.
like
Yep.
it's like, nope, I don't want any of those. And ironically, it's funny because Saw was that's the one of the six that I think is the one that most is up my alley, because it is that more
Hmm.
grounded in realism, grounded in like this is just a freaky thing that would happen and would be very scary, but it's also not supernatural in any way.
Right.
And that's kind of more up my alley of what I enjoy. And that was definitely, of the six, that was easily the one that I enjoyed the most. I don't know that it was the best made film of the six that we reviewed, but it was easily the one that I liked watching the
Right.
most.
Makes sense. So who knows? Maybe we'll do another thing next year about this. Maybe we'll do some other films or
Who
something. So
knows? Yeah, this was fun.
this was. So definitely let us know what y'all think of everything. And of course, like, comment, subscribe, everything at Official GYGO or Get Your Geek On. For Aaron and Robert, thank you for watching. Stay geeky, get your geek on, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.